I didn't think I'd be back within a couple of days about this situation regarding the media coverage of cosmetic nurse Rachel Hale, but here we are. A couple of articles have been published about me and some other people who questioned the way that Rachel was presented to the public as an outback nurse. The article in question I saw this morning first was by Frank Chung in news.com.au, since syndicated across all the usual Murdoch outlets, and it's called "What Am I Gaining Out of This? Nurse who described Indigenous child abuse hits back at online threats." Since then, there's been a Daily Mail article doing what Daily Mail always does best and copying Frank's article, and that one's titled "Nurse Who Spoke Out About Child Sexual Abuse in Remote Indigenous Communities Hits Out at Disgusting Trolls. They're tearing me to shreds." Daily Mail at least were decent enough to mention me by name in their article, and they managed to quote just one decontextualised line of the specific case I was making, which is, I can't help but ask myself the question, what the fuck would Rachel Hale know about Aboriginal people in Alice Springs? And yes, that's true, I did say that, but just to remind you, the case I made in that video wasn't just that I don't think Rachel's an expert on Aboriginal people in Alice Springs. Actually, I said that if Rachel hasn't done any nursing in Alice Springs, then everything she announced to the national press about what she knows about Aboriginal kids being raped until they hit the streets has to be based entirely on stories from other people, rumours, and or, at best, nursing work from somewhere else that isn't Alice Springs. With that firmly in mind, let's get into Frank Chung's article. A Northern Territory nurse says she has been inundated with disgusting messages and threats after speaking out against child sexual abuse plaguing many of Australia's remote Indigenous communities. Miss Hale, a Darwin resident who visits the troubled town every 2 months for her cosmetic business, says she now fears for her safety after questions were raised about her background. In one viral social media post, an employee at Alice Springs Hospital accused her of lying and said she was not registered with the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. The post, which has since been deleted, claimed she was merely a cosmetic nurse who could not have witnessed the incidents she had described. To clarify, in my previous video, I didn't personally make any mention of her registration status because I assumed she might well be registered under another surname, and that, as it turns out, is correct. I think she uses her maiden name. What I said is that she only does cosmetic nursing, and it seemed to me that all she'd done in the NT is do cosmetic nursing. Now, that obviously has since been clarified, so let me correct the record for my part and any inaccuracy from my previous video, because clearly back then I arrived at the wrong conclusion to say that Rachel hadn't done any nursing in the NT. She also did NT government nursing work until around 2017, and since then Rachel has done a blend of cosmetic nursing and some other nursing work. She did, as I understand it, do nursing for a time at Danella Dilba Nursing Clinic in the NT, and that was in Darwin. Now, Darwin, to be clear, is 1,500 kilometres away from Alice Springs. I am in Brisbane. I am 1,500 kilometres away from New Caledonia. I am not in a position to tell you about rapes in New Caledonia. Even if my job told me all about rapes in Brisbane, which it doesn't, I still can't tell you with any authority about child rapes in New Caledonia. Does that make any sense? She posted my personal details on Twitter with my number. People were like, I'm going to find this bitch. From 7 a.m. yesterday morning, I've had all these private numbers calling, people commenting on my business page. I had to shut down my personal Facebook. Just really disgusting, harassing messages. Group harassment is never nice. I did not and would never encourage my followers to use a carriage service to harass. Rachel will know what I mean about that. I did leave Rachel a rude and sarky voice message, yes, I admit, but hey, In the grand scheme of things, that's probably marginally less intimidating than having the threat of a military intervention dangled over your entire community because everyone reckons you are rapists. If you choose to engage with Sky News and Murdoch Press and Ben Fordham to have your Alice street fighting videos and your rape rumours broadcast on a national platform during a time of loud calls for a second of intervention, well, whilst I never think you should be subjected to group harassment, I do think you should expect to upset some people. Another commentator on YouTube argued social media post history suggested Miss Hale had been doing nothing but squirting Botox for the past 7 years. Does everyone get that I'm not necessarily denigrating the noble profession of squirting Botox into cunts' faces here? I'm simply saying that squirting Botox into cunts' faces is not nursing in Alice Springs. All she's done in Alice Springs is squirt Botox into cunts' faces, ergo no medical or community experience. Simple. I never said I worked in Alice, she said. The abuse is the same everywhere. That's not to say I don't have colleagues in Alice Springs who see this stuff. My inbox is full of messages of support from healthcare workers saying we're seeing the same thing. I'm not after another stolen generation or intervention. I don't want beautiful kids taken away from beautiful families. Mind you, she did engage with press outlets who were calling for an intervention, even literally in the conversation with her, like with Ben Fordham.
What about the need to actually go inside these homes? What about a need for an intervention?
That's a very hot topic, isn't it?
Like, that's how it all started back in the day when the federal government decided, look, this is a crisis. We've got children's lives on the line here. Something's got to give, and if we have to be the bad cop, we will be the bad cop. That's what's needed right now.
Now she says she doesn't want that, so let's just take her at face value and be fucking done with cosmetic nurse Rachel, because I'm not interested in a back and forth with her. Yeah, no, this is ridiculous. If you really gave a fuck about improving welfare or justice outcomes or whatever for Indigenous communities in and around Alice Springs, you wouldn't be pointing this spotlight at a fucking YouTuber and a cosmetic nurse. You'd be talking to, I don't know, Indigenous-led community service organisations and other grassroots orgs who do constructive on-the-ground work in the area and asking them what their thoughts are. Sadly, we aren't talking about people who give a fuck about any of those things, are we? We're talking about the Australian mainstream media. And remember, my previous video began and ended with them, not with Rachel, with them, and their role in parachuting in fake experts to construct the context for another NT intervention. And no, it isn't Rachel who decided to label herself with the title Outback Nurse in this article to confer some authority on the matter. It's news.com.au who did that. Look, they're still doing it in their response, even after my video, which criticised exactly fucking that. And it isn't Rachel, I assume, who called herself an Alice Springs resident either. No, looky here, that was Peter Creglin in Sky News, again, to confect authority on the matter. So right now I don't really care about Rachel and her stories of bulk rapes. You know who I'm interested in right now? Frank Chung from Newscorp, who wrote this column. Because right after talking to Rachel, Frank decided to consult with an expert again. Keith Gregory, 64, founder of the Guardians of Earth Foundation, a support group for Indigenous survivors for child sexual abuse, backed Miss Hale's comments. Aboriginal people right across Australia think it's an issue, he said. You will find it is only a small group of Aboriginal people that will not agree with her, that will attack her. It's very hard. She's a human being, she's a woman, she's a mother, and she's spoken out about children being abused. And we know the sexual abuse increases with alcohol. Mr. Gregory said he had written to Alice Springs Hospital requesting an apology from the employee to Miss Hale. Unfortunately, what has happened, they're trying to force this into it being about racism and attacking black people or Aboriginal people, he said. That is just a diversionary tactic. It doesn't matter whether it's black or white. I already know about Keith Gregory because he's been yammering on in my Facebook comments about getting the police onto me and suing me and defamation and shit ad nauseum since he saw my first video. Here's Keith Gregory. And here's Keith Gregory's Guardians of Earth Foundation. Frank Chung from Newscorp said Keith runs Guardians of Earth, billed as a support group for Indigenous survivors of child sexual abuse. That sounds fantastic. Nice work, Keith. What is Guardians of Earth? Here's some excerpts from a slideshow made by Keith Gregory explaining what the project is. What is Guardians of Earth? An online children's club run at school, created from a story read one chapter every week on the Intergalactic Health Council, seeking sick and dying children on planet Earth, sending celestial guardians to gather and empower all children to save the world. They will also be tasked with ridding the world of the predator virus. How does this impact on child sexual abuse? Within the story Chronicles of the Guardians, they speak of a predator virus that invades the bodies of humans and makes them do terrible things to kids. As warriors, the children's goal is to rid the world of the predator virus, keeping a constant lookout for those who are showing signs of infection. On the child's page, there is a predator virus alert button. The child will now want to tell in order to rescue their loved one or friend from the virus. The difference now is they will report to their online AI mentor who they trust. How do the rewards work? The child is connected to their webpage through an RFID wristband, not a tracker. Teachers, parents, doctors, nurses and police will all have a rewards RFID app on their phone. Within the app there are preset reward points for undertaking the solution set by strong leaders. There are also reward points for academic achievement, washing hands, having a shower, cleaning teeth, going to the doctor, or having a positive conversation with the police. Keith's a white bloke, right? Keith's like the Northern Territory Chief Protector of Aborigines, Weird Edition. He's like A.O. Neville on acid, you know? Like, he's definitely got mad ideas about how he's going to save all these Aborigines from themselves. And Keith reckons I'm going to get sued. Why don't you get the Intergalactic Health Council onto me, hey? Here's Keith saying that the reason he can't get his voice out there is because of the Aboriginal elite. The old Aboriginal Illuminati, hey? The Aboriginal Freemasons. Fuck me. I'm not even going to get into all the wealth of information I've found about how Keith Gregory has gotten into fights with countless prominent, hard-working Indigenous activists and activist families. That's another story. This video is not about old mate and his Aboriginal microchips. This story is about Frank Chung from Newscorp. Frank, the subject matter here is Aboriginal youth crime in Alice Springs. And Frank, mate, I know you know all about that subject because all you've been fucking doing for the past 7 days is publishing articles about Aboriginal people being criminals in Alice Springs. 7 articles. One of them is about how they get you to answer heaps of questions when you buy booze in the bottle-o because of the bad Aboriginals. Another one is about how people are selling their properties because of the bad Aboriginals. And another one is about how they've locked all the cabinets in the Woolies because of the bad Aboriginals. You get the picture. Frank's source for a lot of this, it would seem, is the admin for the Action for Alice page, a baker named Darren Clark, an expert baker. Darren's Action for Alice page compiles videos of black people committing crimes, all over the place, not just in Alice Springs. Sometimes he puts them in from Darwin, sometimes other places, just so long as it's black people depicted doing bad crimes in the videos. Why is Darren happy to pop Darwin black crime videos up in the context of Alice Springs black crime? I don't get it. Maybe because Darren's obsessed with black crime. What kind of white person is obsessed with black crime? I know, it's what is it called again? It's just incredible. Because my only contribution to this whole thing began when I said that Rachel Hale is not an appropriate person to give a pedestal to about the subject matter in question. And in the response to that, Frank's brought in Keith Gregory, the Intergalactic Health Council Aboriginal child microchipper. Do you think he's the appropriate person to give a pedestal to about the subject matter in question? So Frank, mate, Frank Chung from Newscorp, I've looked up the definition of an expert for you. It says it right here. It says, one with the special skill or knowledge representing mastery of a particular subject. Frank Darren from Action for Alice is a baker who obsessively compiles black crime videos. He is not an expert on issues facing the Aboriginal community. Frank Chung from News Corp. Bro, Rachel Hale is not an expert about the Aboriginal community in Alice Springs because Rachel has never done nursing in Alice Springs. Frank Chung from News Corp. Frank, Frank, listen to me. Keith Gregory here wants to have Aboriginal children microchipped, give them points for being nice to cops and brushing their teeth, and he wants to get them to report a pedovirus to an AI chatbot so that the Intergalactic Health Council can stop Aboriginal pedos. Frank Chung from News Corp, do you see how Keith might not be an expert? That's the end. This is people's lives you're playing with. It feels like we are this close to another intervention. And if that happens, the welfare of whole communities and their generations to come will be blood on your hands, you News Corp fucking parasites. That's the lesson here. That's all I ever had to say anyway. Start talking to Indigenous-led orgs in Alice if you actually care about that region, instead of just wanting to publish trauma porn for racists. And stop publishing shit about me and Rachel and this intergalactic pedo hunter. We have nothing to do with the core subject matter. Don't you fucking bring me up again, you ghoulish maggots. That's it. That's all you get. Goodbye.